Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life. My name is Andy Zaremba, and this is another episode of Vancouver Real. And with me behind the helm today is my brother Mike.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here. Welcome, and thanks for joining.
And today is another installment of the TEDx Stanley Park series, and I will get to introducing our guest in a few minutes. But as usual, we are recording out of 70 West Cordova Street here in Gastown, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And this is our business, Floathouse. And if you haven't heard of Floathouse, go to floathouse.ca, and you can learn everything about flotation therapy. And we have a really good short video on YouTube as well called What is Floating? And if you'd like to learn more about it, it'll give you quite a good synopsis of what the benefits of floating are in a very succinct manner. Personally, I try to get in there once a week during the winter months especially. I find just the added rest really help in getting out of the cold. And I feel like the winter months and the rain and the cold is definitely float weather.
Absolutely. I kind of look at it like contrast therapy in a way. Like I find, okay, it's kind of dark and gloomy outside. Well, if I go into super dark, pitch black sensory reduction mode, when you come out, it's actually, quite a bit brighter and everything feels a little bit lighter.
Definitely. Yeah, I noticed that a lot. And it does feel quite uplifting as well for some reason. After every time I float, one of my favorite things to do is when I actually leave the center, I leave Floathouse and I'm just walking down the street. Mm-hmm. And I just, your sensory acuity is much higher. And
Agreed.
Everything seems more vivid, especially sounds and visually as well. I just feel like
sharper.
I feel sharper, and I feel like I'm walking through this sort of protective bubble through Gastown, which kind of shields me. And instead of being wrapped up in all the craziness of Gastown, I just feel like I'm an observer of the entire show, which is an interesting phenomenon.
It's like sanding your nervous system so that way you're nice and smooth and you glide through the world versus getting hung up and on your barbs from when you're all jagged.
I haven't heard. We haven't done that one before. Sanding your nervous system.
Yeah, polishing it up.
Exactly. So that's Floathouse. If you'd like to give it a shot, go to floathouse.ca, and you can use the promo code VancouverReal, and that will get you a 20% discount on a single float.
Mm-hmm. And as per usual, we also want to make a little announcement towards the Vancouver Real communities. We do monthly, well, not quite monthly meetups, depending on the time of year, but regular meetups for the community. They're free events, and we have a huge diversity of things that we go through, whether it's a yoga class together or a hike. We'll do website building. We'll do nutrition workshops. So it's all kind of free and really just to kind of cover the breadth of topics we do on the show, but also bring it together in real life and real person and connect as a community. So if you want to join that, Facebook, there's a community group page. And if you're not on the Facebook, then you can go to our website, vancouverreal.tv, and just sign up for the mailing list. And we'll also be notifying everybody through the next meetup events on there. So definitely check out the Vancouver Real community, either on Facebook or through the email list.
And also on the Facebook, we have another group page called Mindful Mass. And this is a meditation group that we started in 2016, late 2016. And we went through the entire year. And what we do is we do giant mass public meditation. So we go to a new public site every single quarter, basically. We try to hit all the solstices and equinox. And we do giant meditations. And the whole idea behind it is to sort of normalize meditation and show that it's something you can sort of do anywhere. And when you go out to these events, there's people from all walks of life. And it's a really an interesting experience doing group meditation. Mm-hmm. One of the neatest experiences I had was when we did the very first one. And I was sitting at the front with Carolyn. And we did our 20-minute meditation. And I opened my eyes. And then the entire group opened their eyes in front of me at the same time, and it was just such a surreal experience seeing all these calm gazes looking back there. Everyone was just so calm and so present. It was really powerful. I can't describe it so much what the feeling was, mm-hmm. but it's an amazing thing when you see a group of people that I guess bring their vibrations down and calm everything down. It's an interesting energy field it creates in that environment. I don't know if you noticed that at all, but
well, when you're talking there, it reminds me of a shirt that I have, and it says, I got it from one of the people at the Float Conference saying, when we relax, we're all the same. And I can only imagine, at that moment, everyone's kind of coming out of their intro space, their internal space, and then, reconnecting, and, you kind of, get this, oh, you're right where I am, but you're not me right now, at least on this physical plane. And so, I don't know, you kind of get this
weird... That's a good way of saying it. It was really interesting. But if you're interested in coming out to an event, join up with the Vancouver Meditation Mob page on Facebook, or you can go to mindfulmass.org website and sign up for the mailing list and stay in touch with us for any future events. So today, we'll get to our guests finally after all of that. This is the fourth installment of the TEDx Stanley Park series, and very fortunate to have Sarah Morgan with us today, and a surprise guest. We have Morgan Maryk, and I like surprises. We were initially planning to just interview Sarah, and she's like, "I have a friend with me," and we're like, "Okay, we're going to rearrange the studio and squeeze you in." So, welcome to Vancouver Real.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Sarah runs a company called Nano-Lit Technologies, and the website is nanolit.com.
Correct.
And that's Vancouver-based, right?
Yes.
Nice. And Morgan has a company called Recharge.ca. It's Vancouver-based as well?
Yeah. That's
Right. And it's all around charging stations for electric cars, EVs?
Yep. Advertising-funded electric vehicle charging station.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. Well, and we're going to get into what you guys do and sort of the disruptive technology behind all this, and hopefully get into a really diverse conversation around that. But let's start off with Sarah. And I wanted to chat a little bit about what was the subject of your TEDx Stanley Park talk, and why did you choose it?
So I am focusing at TEDx Stanley Park on basically the effect that sunlight has on us and what happens when we don't get it.
Very relevant for Vancouver.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great opportunity to get to talk about it in a less sort of formal setting, and appreciate you letting Morgan join us, because
no problem.
When you're doing unusual stuff, it takes an unusual amount of energy.
Mm-hmm.
So
definitely.
Coming to Vancouver, the product made sense to people immediately. The company actually started in the UK, grew in the Netherlands, and then when we came to Vancouver, we showed our product to the city, and our lights are in City Hall right now.
Cool.
And they simulate sunlight indoors. And so much of our work is based on the backs of decades of research, studying the effects of circadian rhythms and circadian rhythm disruption, which is basically bad sleep.
Right.
And of course, there's growing research showing that bad sleep impacts just about every body function. And over time can lead to serious diseases.
Right. So do your lights somehow reset or normalize circadian rhythms so people can sleep normally, even because I know like this time of year, we have like 8 hours of daylight essentially. And when you're inside, you're not even getting that daylight anyways.
Correct.
So is that a solution to that problem if people aren't getting the natural sunlight that we need? Yeah.
Well, as you pointed out, we're spending most of our time indoors. In fact, we're spending 90% of our time indoors. So
we wouldn't even think about that, eh?
Right.
Yeah.
That's basically 2.5 hours you need to spend outdoors to hit your 10%. And we're definitely not doing
Not even close.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the main problem. Then the secondary problem is that when we switch on our lighting, it stays the same color all day. But the human body evolved over 4.5 billion years under sunlight, which is dynamic.
Sure.
It's constantly changing color, angle, and brightness. And that all tells the ganglion cells in the human eye or on different organisms what to do at those different times of day. So every organ has its own clock, and it connects to the whole body clock. And our eye is like a Bluetooth for the sun, telling what chemicals and what hormones to release at different times of day.
So is that related to the whole blue light thing? When people look at their phones, you get that stimulus of cortisol, which can actually disrupt your sleep as well. And I'm assuming that's a similar phenomenon is going on when you're getting natural sunlight coming in. You're going to get that cortisol effect, and it's going to help wake you up in the morning, which is what you want.
Yep.
But then the problem is, with the screens especially, we're getting that same stimulation at night, which is disrupting our sleep, and we're not getting the melatonin production. Is that
correct?
Part of it?
Correct. So It's not about one particular kind of light is bad. It's that the body requires different wavelengths of light for different amounts of time at different times of day. So back to Vancouver, we don't get enough sunlight in Vancouver between November and March for the body to produce enough vitamin D. So, what do you do about that?
You can either supplements,
but also, getting outdoors and exercising, even when it's pouring rain.
Okay.
But also, and I've lost my train of thought a little bit, but you were asking me about
the blue lights.
The blue lights, right?
Yeah.
So blue light can be awesome. It's been used in Japan on subway platforms where they have high numbers of suicides, and over 4 years, it's reduced suicide rates by 84%. So that midday blue light is awesome when it's at midday. But as you say, if your screen is emitting that sort of wavelength of light at night, your body's saying, oh, okay, it's still daytime.
Right.
So you mentioned you have this technology in City Hall.
Yeah.
Now, how sophisticated is it at this point? Is it so much so that will you adjust the lighting? Is it able to be adjusted throughout the day in that building to even mimic, say, being at the latitudinal level that we're at in Vancouver to mimic what we're at for this season specifically? Is it at that level of sophistication yet, or is it more just we're going to give you? Was it more kind of blocks of this chunk of time or this part of the day you're going to get this intensity of light,
a standard dosage almost.
Would you keep it the year round the same, or would you actually change it as the seasons change too to match it? Is that reasonable?
Awesome questions.
Yeah.
Do you need a product development job?
No. Well, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So at the moment, it's scheduled basically around the 29th parallel because that's considered the right amount of light for the right amount of time at the right wavelengths for your body to produce vitamin D. Now, our
that's
lights...
optimal kind of for human function, they found?
About.
Does that change, though, based on how much melanin somebody has in their skin and that sort of thing?
Of course.
Yeah.
And then your age. And then your skin color. There's so many factors, right? But we have to get away from fixed lighting.
So where is the 29th parallel? Where is that?
Around LA.
Okay. Interesting. Oh.
So that's the optimal place to live if you were getting outdoors enough to get the right amount of sunlight exposure.
So I'm not a biologist, so I'm going to say basically from the research that I've read, the answer is yes. But I think, as you point out, there are so many variables. But we need, we're in the early days of circadian rhythm lighting. And the focus of circadian rhythm lighting at this point is to not fight with what the sun is telling your body to do.
Yeah.
And so we don't get enough sunlight here in the winter. Okay, so maybe the lighting system that we've got in City Hall, which is around the 29th parallel solar cycle, that may be fighting with outdoors. But on the other hand, our body is not really a huge fan of the lighting right now in Vancouver. So,
and it's sort of a set point, a standard point as well, right? It's not going to be perfect for everyone, but it's better than what most people are getting anyways.
Yes. So what they have shown from studies on circadian rhythm lighting that uses just standard LEDs, and we use quantum dots, which is 30% improved color over LEDs. What they've shown is that people's productivity can increase by up to 19%. You can improve employee retention by up to 2 years on average. You can improve efficacy of drug treatments for mental health by up to 15%.
What about less sick days and stuff like that?
1% less sick days. There's so many ways in which simulating sunlight indoors improves a person's well-being and productivity. And of course, when you improve a person's productivity, you're improving a company's organizational profitability. And so
interesting angle. I like that.
Well, yeah. So if you have an employee who you pay $100,000 a year and they're responsible for $300,000 of revenues, let's say we can increase their productivity by up to 10%. That person's now generating an additional $30,000 a year for the company. So, and don't take it from me, take it from Airbus, Philips Lighting, research centers in the US and Europe. So, we're relying on that data to start our own data creation.
So what I'm hearing is that these lights are sort of have a twofold effect. One, there's the color that they emit.
Yep.
And two is the absorption through your skin, which helps with vitamin D production.
Okay.
Is there anything else in there?
Right. So we don't have UV in the lights.
Okay.
So it's not like a sunbed type
Okay,
light.
so you're not getting the vitamin D? Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
So, and the reason for that is that there's regulation around UV lighting indoors for obvious reasons.
Right.
I mean, everything from, bleaching fabrics through to you getting a sunburn unwittingly. So there's a lot of regulation in that area, but certainly for future applications and specifically with quantum dots, UV is actually an awesome light source.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, not right now.
So right now it's primarily the color technology.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do this little routine at home where I have these Philips Hue lights.
Great.
And what
Very
I'll do
similar
is
to
I
what
have
we're
them
doing.
timed. So at like 7 o'clock, they go to what I call sunset.
Yeah.
I have them labeled. So sunset
Yeah.
is like it's a very yellowish hue to it.
Yeah.
Then there's sundown, which is like it's a little more orangey red, and then I call it bedtime red because I'm going to bed at that time.
Yeah.
And it's a very deep red color, and
Yeah.
they transition over the course of an hour. And I find when it does that, and I'm at home and I'm on my regular schedule, and I'm lying in bed with the really deep red lights on, it's amazing how those things just conk you out.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a similar idea to what you're playing with.
But here's the difference. You're using that at bedtime. We're lighting people when they're at work.
Right. Yeah.
So people who have a window at the office get on average 46 more minutes of sleep per night. Now, not okay. Who cares? 46 minutes.
I know,
But
that's
over
significant.
okay. Well, so over time, yeah, that compounds.
Yeah.
And so we're really interested. In fact, the person who's using our lighting has no windows. So we want to see, can we improve his circadian rhythm? Can we reduce stress? So, the future of our lighting is focused on biofeedback, right? So they're now saying, I shouldn't say they are saying, research is showing that after a fight, blue light can actually help to calm you down. They're using blue light on astronauts before launch time, going up to the space station.
It seems counterintuitive because to me the blue light is the one stimulating the cortisol, which is going
Correct.
to stimulate you. So why does that calm somebody down?
Because it's probably, and again, I don't know the detailed answer here, but it's probably because when you're getting sunshine, and you think about when you go on holiday, right? You want to go to places where there's sunshine. There's some sort of happiness drug,
Yeah.
I believe.
Definitely.
Whatever that would be called or what the scientific term for that would be, I don't know.
Process there, yeah.
But think about it. I mean, we all plan our holidays based on where we can get sunlight.
Yeah.
That's...
And it does have an effect. As soon as you go on vacation and you go to a sunny environment, your mood elevates.
Well, it's
Exactly.
it's multifactorial for sure. But
Yeah.
but even here in Vancouver, you see that all the time. When it's a sunny day, especially like when we get into February, March, and you get that first sunny day and it's like
Yeah.
12 degrees and
Yeah.
sunny.
Oh, people just
We're
are
euphoric.
Yeah.
They're just prancing around
Yeah.
outside, and it's like it's still 10 degrees outside, but everyone's wearing shorts and playing volleyball.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah. And not to go back to the bummer version of this, but in Japan, they noticed, because they've done a lot of studies on suicide there, they've noticed that after 2 or 3 days of bad weather, the suicide rate goes up. So clearly, our emotions are also linked to our exposure to sunlight.
Totally.
So with the TEDx Stanley Park talks, generally I know Roger, he wants to have a big call to action to
Yeah.
inspire the audience to go take action and go better the world in some way. So what is your call to action for this talk?
I think the loudest thing that we're hearing from all areas is put down your device. The lying in bed with your phone on, the laptop, Okay, failing that, you can download apps that remove those blue wavelengths of light, just like your Philips Hue. It will shift the color of the screen depending on what time you tell it you go to bed and wake up. And then, thirdly, get out and exercise. Are you even fulfilling 10% of the day being outdoors?
Most people probably aren't.
No.
Most days,
Yeah.
When I've spent 2.5 hours outdoors, I am aware of it. I've had a big day outdoors,
And you're
but
more
it's only been
tired.
2.5 hours. Yeah.
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 That's really
So,
interesting.
yeah.
Okay, so the call to action is to basically inspire people to get off their phones, more or less. Or
Yeah, pay attention to sleep. Okay, so then the broader version of that is sleep hygiene, right? That's
Right.
sort of a growing term.
yeah.
Going to bed at the same time every night, even on the weekends, getting up at the same time, making sure that there's no light coming into the room, But the biggest call to action is we need to change our relationships with our devices, and we need to see sunlight just as important as food and water.
Right. And I guess, we could go into all the negative aspects of not getting enough sleep, but we know that's really terrible for people on a lot of different levels. But I guess in theory, if you're helping people sleep better and they're in general have better health and they're in better moods, that's going to benefit everyone's lives as well. More productivity and just happier, nicer people in general, right?
Yeah. When you're not getting good sleep consistently, your blood pressure is affected, heart rate, metabolism,
immune system,
your metabolism. It's just the knock-on effect is
It's huge. Well, the immune system
phenomenal.
one is that's a big one, right? Because now your antibodies aren't going around killing bad cells or defending against pathogens or whatever. So super important to get that sleep.
Yeah.
Now, so you guys are both in the disruptive technology space. I like that. It's not that's a buzz term, but that's like 2016 disruptive technology. That's been around for a while now, right? So, Morgan, why don't you tell me a little bit about your company, Recharge.ca, and what you're doing and why you're doing it?
Sure. Thank you for that. So what we do is we realized there was a challenge facing the adoption of electric cars. There wasn't enough charging stations. Who wants to go and buy a vehicle when there's no place to fill it up? That's one of the major barriers to the early adoption of electric cars, is that there's no infrastructure to support them.
Mm-hmm.
Cities don't necessarily want to spend a ton of money when there's very few people actually driving electric cars. So we're sitting there with a bit of a chicken and an egg problem. You need to put out the infrastructure, but there's not really a lot of people clamoring for it because they don't have electric cars and they're not wanting to go buy them because there's nowhere to plug them in. So it was this issue that we were looking at, and I was actually an early investor in Tesla because I saw this thing coming, and that was back in 2012. So I started looking at ways that I could get involved and sort of help to tackle this problem of not enough infrastructure, not enough people trying to push for it. And so I started donating charging stations. I started giving them to people up in Hope. I donated one, and it was a way to sort of extend the charging network up that way. But I realized that wasn't a sustainable thing to do. I couldn't continue to just give away charging stations. And I also got pushback because people were renting out their parking stalls to commercial clients. So they wanted to get money on top of a free station every month to compensate them for that lost parking stall that was reserved for electric vehicles.
Yeah.
So I came up with this whole concept to advertise on the charging stations as a way to pay for them. And that has evolved into what's now actually a smart city solution that integrates charging stations with interactive wayfinding, public Wi-Fi, and sensors for vehicle counting, pedestrian counting, and a whole suite of smart city solutions that are integrated into a charging station that we can then give to cities for free. And then it's all paid for with ad revenue.
Do you have it set up anywhere yet?
Not yet. We're working on our first pilot project actually with the city of Las Vegas. We've submitted a scope of work and we're waiting to hear back if that gets approved. And that'll be our first location.
Awesome. So how many stations do you think you're going to set up or try to set up in Las Vegas?
It'll be a total of 6 stations with 10 chargers in total.
And will they be spread out, or will it be like a charging station for electric vehicles?
It'll be 2 hubs with 5 parking stalls in each.
Okay.
Right.
So that's the 10 stations.
Interesting. The first question that comes to mind around that, I know Tesla has done a similar thing. Like, I think when you buy a Tesla, you have charging stations set out where you can travel long distances, and your car will always make it there in time. Is that true?
The car always making there in time is not quite accurate, but they did make a network to support the adoption of their cars.
Right. So I'm saying, like, I was under the impression like you could drive from like Vancouver to Calgary, and there's enough stations that would get you there on your trip. Or is that not accurate?
That's pretty close. I mean, they've been doing their best to build out the network. They've made it so it's possible to drive from the East Coast or from the West Coast to the East Coast of the U.S. I'm not sure how much they've done that in Canada. I know they've got some stations actually up in Hope and areas that they're put there strategically to try to build out that network so that you can do long range travel. Your vehicle may or may not get to them depending on which route you're taking, but it'll let you know which way to go so that you can make it.
Right. So this is a way you can actually get these charging stations in more places because, in a sense, they pay for themselves, right? So
Yeah.
you can expand much more rapidly, which of course will hopefully support the entire EV market, right?
Yeah, and Tesla did a great thing because they built out this infrastructure, but unfortunately, it's only for Teslas. So there's all of the other cars, the Nissan Leaf, the Chevy Bolt. There's all these electric vehicles that are not able to utilize the Tesla charging network because they have a different plug. So what we've done is we've gone and we're addressing that market, the 90% of other cars that are not Teslas that are coming out onto the market and that need to be supported.
How much info do you have on just the EV market in general, and what's that going to look like in, say, 2, 3, 5 years from now? Like, how many cars are out there on the market? How many people have them? Like, what's the percentage change? Like, do you know any of those numbers?
Yeah, so it's growing rapidly. And the most recent number that I have in my head is from 2016, which was that there's 2 million electric vehicles globally, which is
Globally?
Yeah, globally.
Okay.
So that's a drop in a bucket.
Yeah.
It's very small. But the numbers indicate that by 2020, there will be over 200 million
Wow.
globally. Yeah.
Wow.
And how is that going to be accommodated? Are the EVs going to be coming down in price so more people can afford them? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, so like with computers, when they first came onto the market, they were very expensive. Most people couldn't afford them. But as more people start to adopt them, they're able to bring the component costs down because they're manufacturing more at one time, and it brings all of the different parts and pieces down in price, which can decrease the cost of the vehicles in total.
So is there some sort of curve they have projecting like the increase in EVs then? And they're predicting by, you said 2020?
Yeah, by 2020, 200 million. So
there's 2 million now, and there's going to be 200 million by 2020?
yeah.
Wow.
One example that you can see is in California last year, there was like 1.4% adoption overall of EVs out of new car sales. In January alone, they did 4%.
Of 2017?
Of all new cars. And I believe it was actually January of 2017. So these are 2016, 2017 numbers. They're always a little bit delayed in coming out.
Right. So what was the numbers for January 20?
They went from all year
17?
being 1.4% to
Yeah.
being 4.7% or somewhere around there. They blew it out of the water already in the first month of January.
Wow. So they quadrupled it in 1 month versus what they did the whole year of the year before.
Yes.
Right.
Holy, that's exponential. So that means like it's just gonna ramp up.
That's exactly it. It's an exponentially growing technology, and people are adopting it like crazy because
Totally.
Nobody wants to spend $70 to $100 on a gas tank or a tank of gas when you can go and get an electric vehicle that you can fill up for $2.50.
Right. Especially for the urban use. Like I know for myself in my small young family, as soon as my fiance's like Volkswagen Jetta conks out and that's done, like our goal is to buy an electric vehicle for city use, where you don't need to have 400 plus kilometers of range yet.
Yep.
But that will probably improve in time too. But, just economically, environmentally, I can see, especially as our generation gets more, my generation being, I'm 35, getting into a more financial established position to be able to make these types of purchases. I mean, it's definitely on a lot of people's radars, no doubt.
Yeah, from interviews or surveys, they've found that 50% of people have indicated their next vehicle will be an electric car.
Right.
It's definitely a a booming market.
Right. That potential is super there then.
Yeah.
So obviously, like one of the top brands is Tesla, and everyone knows about Tesla, and a lot of people dream of having a Tesla one day. Luckily, they should be coming down in price when the next model comes out. Correct?
Yeah, the Model 3 is
The Model
their
3.
mass market electric vehicle.
And when's that one supposed to be released?
Well, it's been released. It's
Okay.
just hard to get one because they're having trouble meeting demand and getting the production issues sorted out to ramp up so that they can actually get the vehicles out to the consumers.
Do you know what one of those goes for?
They start at 35,000 US. That's like base model. You can, with options, get it all the way up to $100,000 if you wanted to.
Sure. So what are some of the other brands that are coming out that might be more affordable options for people?
Well, Nissan has the Nissan Leaf,
Yeah.
and it's around a $25,000 price tag. But if you wanted to, you could go right now and get a used Nissan Leaf for $12,000.
Yeah.
And then if you're just doing daily commuting, it gets you 190 kilometers ish to a charge, which is far more than most people need to go from home to work and back. And that can completely offset your gas bill or your fuel bill.
Right. And this is really, to me, reassuring that this trend is happening because, one of the biggest things I see that's destructive in our day-to-day lives is just fossil fuel consumption. Like when you're driving around Vancouver, it's just there's so many cars on the road and they're all fossil fuel driven. It's like, and we know that that's one of the huge contributors to environmental issues that we have coming and global warming and all of that. So it's great to see this trend being reversed, and it's really promising to hear about this sort of exponential growth that you're predicting.
Yeah, it's very impressive. Actually, 37% of all of the pollutants in Vancouver are from personal vehicles.
Wow.
So if we can shift that to electric vehicles, imagine how much cleaner our air will be, how much nicer it will be, the noise that will be reduced from the streets. There's so many positives.
So you're in City Hall already, right?
Yeah.
And so you got some connections there. So how do we get, some of these charging stations in and around Vancouver if we have a connection to City Hall already?
Yeah, I'm not I don't hang with them on the weekend.
Oh, you don't
but-
hang with them? Well, Gregor's retiring now, so someone's news gonna come in, and they're gonna want to make a name for themselves and
Yeah.
continue the
I
green
think-
city push. So
Sure. I think they see me more as the morning cleanup crew than they do changing Vancouver's light life.
they do for now until their productivity goes up and they have less sick days and everything's running better at City Hall.
Yeah. I think so our company actually did research and development for Mercedes for a year when we were still in Europe, and we were using quantum dot technology and automotive glass. And, so the automotive industry, which is fairly forward-looking, even their adoption rates are like 10 years. Once technology is proven, once you've proven you can manufacture it at scale, it's like 10 years to go through regulation. And so, what I see with Morgan's business is that it's not about if, it's about when.
Mm-hmm.
And when are people going to hurry up and figure out when is now? And I, definitely one thing that we see from, spending time with people at City Hall is, they're backlogged.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
They're backlogged with the maintenance of the city. And, the program that we went through to get our lights installed, which is Vancouver Economic Commission's Green and Digital Development Program, they have to be really careful that they're not drawing down on people's time and energy as a distraction away from maintaining the city, which, of course, taxpayers want to make sure they're getting all their stuff, all their needs met.
Well, they still have to run the city.
Still have to run
And
the city.
evolve at the same time.
Yeah.
So this could be a great entry point for entrepreneurs, right? You guys are both in the tech field and you're into disruptive technologies. What do you two see as future technologies that are up and coming, or maybe even further in the future of things that are going to be really disruptive and make a huge impact?
I'd say artificial intelligence and blockchain. Those are two massively disruptive technologies that are on the way and being very, very, they're getting a lot of money behind them to support the development of these new technologies.
Let's start with AI. how far out are we from seeing, robots walking down the streets and serving us coffees?
I'd say probably about 10 years.
That's not that far.
Oh.
I guess it doesn't seem that
So
far now.
when someone
Yeah.
says artificial intelligence, AI, is that what they mean? Like they mean like the robot, or like what is? Because I'm naive. I'm not really sure about this. So like what else is AI maybe other than like the robot?
So AI is more about the software.
Okay.
It's the processing of data. It's the way that the software interacts with you. So the more that is streamlined and the more easy it is to use and the more it can feel human to you. So when you talk
organic?
Yeah. When you talk to Siri or if you talk to your Google phone and how it responds to you and how simulated that is of a real person, the closer that gets to being a real person, the closer that is to true artificial intelligence.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now,
Interesting.
Now, of course, when you start talking AI, you can automatically jump to a lot of really beneficial and useful applications for it. However, there's also the what if AI takes over the world and we ended up in a Terminator sort of situation. Do you actually see that as a real threat, or is it something that we can actually contain and control?
Unfortunately, I think it could be a real threat because of how much it's been put into our subconsciouses through movies like Terminator and this whole doom and gloom futuristic view that gets pushed through from the media, and that's been planted in our brains as a society. However, fortunately, there's people like Elon Musk who has an open AI group that are specifically there to help shape artificial intelligence to make it benevolent.
Is he paying you today?
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, it's interesting.
inspired me.
It's interesting that you say that it's it's implanted by cultural norms. Where, I mean, the ability to detect threat, say by humans or animals or life in general, is a very normal biological and pragmatic function of our nervous system. So it's like, is it the chicken or the egg? Is it because like we have this ability to detect threat? And now that we're more sophisticated intellectually and able to kind of project further and further into the future and have more sophisticated technologies, is it just still at the baseline an archetypal kind of thing within life
Sure.
that is there that we'll always have to contend with? And like, what's the next doom and gloom? What's the next doom and gloom? Like, I think it's a universal almost.
Yeah. I mean, you were talking about meditation earlier, sensory acuity. While we're in the midst of, he who will not be mentioned on this podcast in case it gives him more advertising. But, at the same time, you're seeing all these women's marches and you're seeing people get more into meditation, get more into being awake and aware. And, and I think all of these technologies in the end come down to really the situation we're facing right now is, are we a moral race or are we an immoral race? And, I think the pendulum, while it looks like it's swinging in the wrong direction right now, it might actually be like us cleaning ourselves up to be ready for this next evolution in technology, right? So,
Could be, yeah.
It's like when you soak a dish and you put the soap and the water in and all the crud floats to the surface, it looks like everything's worse, but actually underneath you have this clean bowl.
Yeah.
My idea of future technologies is nanomaterials. The quantum dots that we work with are basically a nano crystal that emits light, but they're being used in solar panels because they convert sunlight into energy very efficiently. They're also a semiconductor. They've been used in biotech for 20 years because you can couple them with other materials to seek out cancer cells and then light them up.
Whoa.
You can switch them on and off, right? So to me, yes, AI, robotics, for sure. But to me, it's about material science where materials are responding to you, right? And where, quantum dots can also be used not just in LEDs, but they can also be used as biochemical sensors. So now you've got a sensor and an emitter in the same thing. What if we are programming at that level, and that's not so far away.
And what are some of the implications of that?
So we did work for a paint company for a couple of years, a company that owns Dulux called AxoNobel in the Netherlands, and we focused on programmable paint.
Whoa.
My interest was in how we can program our paint to look like sunlight is coming in through the window and moving through the room as it would, on our 29th
So
parallel.
paint that changes color.
Paint that changes color, yeah.
Wow.
And for them, it was for aerospace applications. And my long-term goal is that we're using this on our space rockets so that we can have Earth's solar cycle wherever we travel, and the body can maintain some sort of semblance of a healthy circadian rhythm.
What about in my home?
In your home, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, we got the special paint, and it's going to be attached to an app on my smartphone.
Well,
Exactly.
how great would it be?
And it's going to
Yeah, you
detect
could
my
show it-
human. If I'm sick, it's going to like elevate some parts of it. That's going to reflect back what I need to boost my immunity
Yeah.
and crazy stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, the problem that drove them hiring us was that it takes 7 days of 24 hours a day man hours to repaint a plane every time it's leased out to a different airline. So what if they could just put on one paint and just program
Change
the
the color.
decals?
Sure. Huge.
So that's what
I
we
want
did.
that on my shirt. I could buy one shirt and only have to wear one shirt for
There
the
you
rest of
go.
my life and just change the color, and nobody would ever know.
Nanomaterials.
Yeah.
Nanomaterials.
Yeah.
Wow.
I want to jump back to the AI just really quick. And
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the positive benefits that you guys can both answer, of course? Like, what are some of the positive benefits that AI could bring to humanity?
It could take care of all the jobs that we don't want to do, all the dirty jobs that people really don't like doing. I know that seems like it could be a bad thing, but with that comes some freedom so that we can go and become more creative because it can take care of the mundane tasks. Sure. Sorry.
In the interim too, what just immediately came to mind would be like, okay, so we're not going to have any service sector jobs anymore. There's so many jobs that could be replaced by AI. So that's not going to really help the employment rate. That's for sure.
So
then I guess the next jump to that would be the universal basic income argument, right?
And that's where blockchain comes in as well.
Yeah.
So imagine if you had a cryptocurrency that was just giving everybody cash monthly just to be, and you don't have to work unless you want to. And then you can go and become more creative, more free to do what you want. And I think it's an opportunity. And that's my positive look on the future. It's not
It's an
detrimental.
awakening.
Yeah.
Awakening. It's an opportunity to awaken.
Yeah. And we don't have to stay with this Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 dull life that some people live. That you can go and explore and travel and experience life and be free from doing your job. You can go and create and produce new things.
Evolve personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You
we can stop working, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, before the Industrial Revolution, there was this idea of the 2 sleeps. Have you heard of this?
No.
So you would go to bed around sunset, or just after sunset. Then you'd wake up probably around 2-3 a.m. And this is when Da Vinci did some of his most amazing work.
Okay.
Stay up for a few hours and then have your second sleep. It's this sort of magical time in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Is that why I always wake up at 3 in the morning?
That's
Like,
it's
I
also
wake up at 3 in the
dehydration
morning,
maybe. But
like, so
what time do you go to bed?
Usually around 10:30.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's I too try to go to bed between 9:30 and 10. I normally wake up around 3. I try to get up at 5. I do writing.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's definitely a lot of different types of traditions where waking up in that period of time is really good for meditation and things
Yeah.
like that. Like there's a mysticism element to it there, and now maybe it can be explained, scientifically perhaps as well. But that's like traditionally there's some sort of range between like 2, 3, 4 a.m.
Yeah.
that people will like,
Interesting. This is
meditation and stuff like that.
Pre-industrial revolution.
Yeah,
you said.
because it was the Industrial Revolution that set that sort of 9 to 5
Right, get up.
factory
Right.
work time. But, I mean, think about the conversation we're having right now, just about, yes, my meditation and float tanks. And, even 10 years ago, we would have been a little crazy compared to most people for discussing that. And think about our parents' generation. Discussing your emotions was, completely out there. So we're definitely evolving. And imagine if the discourse becomes increasingly around how's your meditation? Are you aware when you're in conversations? Rather than,
Just
what's
thinking
your
of next
paycheck?
what-
Where do you live? What's your square footage? What do you pay per square foot? What do you drive?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
we have a lot of these conversations. Like
I
you should just
probably-
hang out in the studio more often, and you're going to hear these conversations all the time.
Well,
so.
we probably watch a lot of the same stuff. That's
Yeah,
probably
there's a
got
good
something to do
chance.
with it, yeah.
Let's go into the blockchain a little bit.
Sure.
So right now, obviously, cryptocurrencies are the rage, and there's been a lot of news and things happening in that world with just trading. But aside from the financial opportunities that might be there, what are some other applications for crypto or for blockchain?
Yeah, so blockchain and crypto are two different kind of things. Crypto is just something that you can do with the blockchain. Blockchain creates a trustless ledger of information so that there's a record. It's a record-keeping form of technology that can be basically decentralized, and nobody has to control it. It can create a more trusting society in that we could have governments based on the blockchain where decisions are made and they're clearly recorded and everything's transparent. Nothing's happening behind the scenes. It's all recorded there right on the blockchain that can't be corrupted and can't be hacked. So it creates this opportunity for organizations to restructure. You can have a headless company where there's no actual CEO. It's run by everybody in this organization's blockchain, and they all get an equal say on smart contracts that then are being enforced by the blockchain, and everybody's being held accountable. And that way it can really increase their trust.
Right. So it sounds kind of like the Borg Collective to me. Do you know what the Borg is?
I don't know what the Borg
Star
Collective
Trek?
is.
Oh, it's like a race of humanoids that were like merged with technology, and they were basically a hive mind, and they all worked
I
together.
think you're thinking about Battlestar Galactica.
No, Star Trek.
Oh,
There's
okay.
Borg. Trust me. Yeah, well, that's so basically you can use it in organizations to record anything, basically, and know it's non-corruptible. What about applications with, say, sources of news or media or information? Because that way, one of the big things is the fake news phenomenon. We don't know where the news is being generated from.
Mm-hmm.
You could potentially track it right back to the source and be like, oh, yeah, this is a legitimate piece of news, or at least know where it came from 100%, as opposed to is it being made in some sort of like...
And if something isn't
In Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if something's not being, transparent about it that way, then it's like, well, sorry, you're not transparent, so I can't trust you. Like you said, it brings trust,
Yeah.
which is so
'Cause
huge.
It's so open. Everyone can see everything.
Yeah.
There's nothing to hide anymore, right?
Interesting.
So, yeah, huge. So there's any other applications you can think of with blockchain?
There's a ton, but it can be anything from just record keeping to asset tracking. So when you ship something, you can see where it goes every time it gets checked in, and it can be completely transparent so that if any one item falls off the ship, it's known, it's recorded, it's tracked. It's really good for record keeping. That's one way, but I can see it also
Sounds
when
like
you
FedEx.
yeah, kind of.
Well, I mean, how long until companies like FedEx or other big corporations start adopting this technology and integrating it into what they do? Because if it is so efficient, the question is, why aren't they using it? Maybe
Because it's hard to change. Change is scary for a lot of big organizations, and it's also very hard for them to change. It's like a giant cruise ship. You can't just turn it 90 degrees right then. You have to slowly change course.
Well, it's like the work with the city, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Like they have to maintain the city whilst also evolving. And it's just like, we know the changes that need to happen, but to make them happen is a process, and it has to be respected.
And it's also actually really relevant to how we've developed our product. I'm not plugging, I'm just like explaining.
Yeah, that's fine.
But basically ours is a retrofit for fluorescent tube light
Smart.
fixtures. So you just take out
Awesome.
the fluorescent tube and install our product
Wow.
and bypass the old.
So literally you can have the
Using
same
system.
ballast?
using the existing infrastructure to
exactly.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
But the future of lighting is going to be lighting on the walls. We're going to move away from lighting in ceilings because sunlight is never, or for a limited amount of time right above you.
Lighting
right?
on the
It's normally
wall.
because angle is also going to have an impact. And the smarter we get about how, when, and for how long and what color we need light, it's going to move out of that existing infrastructure. But yeah, if we were to come out of the gate talking about, we're going to program your walls to simulate sunlight, I mean...
Sign me up.
Yeah, sure. And in 15 years, we'll be making money,
right.
Right.
But this product is, specifically because of the company we installed with, and they see a huge demand for retrofits, and they don't get enough product because it doesn't make the manufacturers enough money. It's a huge opportunity for us to get this new technology into existing infrastructure. And I think it's really key, like you say, you have to make incremental changes. You can't
Definitely.
leapfrog.
Now, what about the idea that, we know technology makes things obsolete all the time. That's just what it does. So we have these big organizations that they're moving along and they can't adjust. They're not very agile. And then somebody starts up a new company, new organization, and they adopt all this new technology. Do you think that because of the superior technology that they're using, it could potentially create space for bigger organizations to develop and potentially even overtake them one day? Like, do you think that
You've been watching too much Star Trek.
Yeah. Well,
You could upcycle,
I'm
right?
thinking mostly in terms of like startups, like companies using like these technologies and doing the same services, but then the company becomes better because of that.
Definitely.
And then eventually,
Absorbed.
like Amazon just like eats up everything.
Well, I mean, the perfect example is Kodak. When the digital camera came out, they had an opportunity to adopt this new technology because they actually had people within their organization working on it and developing it. But instead, they decided to stick with how things were and the status quo, and they were too slow to then reposition once they saw the threat. And that's what a startup can do, is because they can adopt this new technology and they can run with it. They're not encumbered by any existing relationships with suppliers. They don't have big board of directors to deal with. You're able to be more agile and quicker to move through all of those kind of hurdles to make that new technology actually real and start utilizing it.
That's a really good example. I was going to use the example of the horse and buggy carriage maker versus the Model T Ford.
Sure.
But yours is a little more contemporary.
Just before we wrap up here, what are some technologies or businesses or anything that's just generally blowing your mind right now that you see coming or that's happening now even?
Oh, don't look at me. I was waiting for you to go first.
So, okay then. Autonomous vehicles are something that's right now coming way faster than people expect.
I'm praying for autonomous vehicles. Like honestly, like driving around to Vancouver all the time, we need them to be managed by blockchain. Or whatever. No, obviously that's
AI.
No, but
AI.
Yeah, we need them to be.
It'll be nice to be able to just sit back in your car and not have to worry about anything as it takes you from A to B.
What happens though, because people get
Yeah.
sucked into their phones even more, and it's just like now we're even glued there.
Or
That is a
you go
challenge.
meditate while you're driving. Like you have your card as like that's just my like meditation bubble, and you go into your space and
That's
100%.
They're calling it the third space.
Hmm.
The car, right? You can use it for working. You can use it for meditation. You can use it for yoga. You could use it for sleeping. What do you use that third space for?
Education.
Yeah.
Education.
Makes total sense, right? It's all that now you have all this freed up time to do whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe you're working on the way to work.
Yeah. Well, but we know in our work in automotive that they're bringing in feng shui masters to design the interior of that car to support and improve how you feel. Yeah. So when you get out of that car, you've actually had an uplifting experience.
Okay, I have the best idea.
Okay, let's do
So
it.
basically, we have electric cars that are like these pod-shaped cars, and we put your lights in them. So it's like when you go in, they dim you down. You get like a nice little cat nap. We have relaxing music. It's like a sensory deprivation car.
I like it.
In a sense, you like chill out and go into your monk mode for the entire ride to work, and then your lights come back on, music comes on. We wake you up nicely, and you're alert and ready to go and fresh as a daisy to go to work.
Well, that's kind of what we were working on.
Whoa.
Oh, you just
Well, cool.
and you get your wheatgrass shot as you getting out the door, and a nice hug.
So that
by your
you're actually
virtual
thinking about
companion.
That's actually what we've
designing
been
that.
working on.
Cool.
We've actually got prototypes to do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's weird. Why would I just, these ideas just come
Oh,
in.
they're floating around in the
What's-
muse.
Yeah.
going on?
I'm putting them out there.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But things that are blowing my mind: nanotechnology.
What about that?
Well, I don't know if I'm sure you have Ray Kurzweil, I like the idea that we are creating environments, and it sounds so ethereal, but when I saw it in practice at the automotive companies, it was like, okay, good. This is where we're thinking. I'm an industrial designer, right? So my training and my background is in designing product for mass production. So how and why do people buy things? And why do they choose some things over others? That's a huge part of what you have to consider when you're designing a product. And the fact is, we're all sitting here with our apples because it looks nice, it feels nice, it's nice to interact with. In a way, consumer behavior is going to dictate where the technology takes us. And we're all, as I said before, evolving and thinking and talking about meditation and our experience. How are we elevating our experience? I practice Transcendental Meditation, where they talk about, you're looking for the more charming experience. And so I think if we're being true to what our sort of natural desires are, which are to awaken, which are to evolve, then we don't need to worry about what's happening in our technologies and our products.
Because it will respond to our behaviors. And
there's this great, maybe this is a good story to end on.
Sure.
But there's these two travelers, there's a traveler, and he goes to the wise man of the town, and he says, I'm new in town, and I want to know, are the people here good or are they bad? And the wise man says, well, what were they like in the last town that you left? And the man says, oh, they were horrible, they were thieves, they were liars. And the wise man says, well, you will find people here much the same. A second traveler comes, asks the same question. What are the people like in this town? Are they good or are they bad? And he asks the traveler, well, what were the people like in your last town? And the traveler says, they were generous, they were kind, I really enjoyed great conversation. And the wise man says, well, you will find people here much the same. And
I love that story. That's great.
So the take home is like
you're projecting
and
whatever
the
you're
world
looking
is a
for,
mirror.
you'll find.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's awesome. I love that story. Well, we are going to wrap it up. Unfortunately, because I feel like this conversation could keep going, and we could brainstorm some more collaborative ideas up in the cloud and manifest them into reality.
Or guess what we've already done.
That was weird. But anyways, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to seeing you at TEDx Stanley Park. How can people get in touch with you?
Our website, nano-lit.com.
Yeah.
And info@nano-lit.com.
Excellent. And for yourself?
Yeah, www.recharge.ca, and you can find me on LinkedIn at Morgan Maryk.
Perfect. All right. Excellent. Well, I'm excited to hear you guys talk, and I'd love to be connected with some other people in the tech industry that you might know who could have some really interesting ideas to share on the podcast. So,
yeah, of course.
And if anybody out there actually has any guest recommendations, feel free to shoot us an email. Mm-hmm. What email address should they use if they want to contact us?
info@vancouverreal.tv.
Yeah, that's the good one. So use info
that's the one.
vancouverreal.tv to reach out. If you have any guest recommendations, anyone you know in the city or elsewhere that should be on the show, please reach out and make that recommendation. Mm-hmm. Really appreciate that. And of course, if you like to come and try a float sometime, visit the website floathouse.ca, and you can book right through there. We have locations in Vancouver. We have Abbotsford coming, and we have Victoria, South Surrey, Langley. So we're kind of all over the Lower Mainland now, and you can use the promo code Vancouver Real in Vancouver, anyways, and get a 20% discount on a single float.
Yes,
and come out to the events, Vancouver Real Community, and the mass meditations, which we should be announcing in a few weeks. So
awesome, cool.
Yeah,
thanks for joining us, folks. And lastly, if you did enjoy this episode or any episode, a rating, review would be really much appreciated as well.
Excellent.
Cool.
So until next time,
to whatever is.
To whatever is.